Did you fall in love with me a little bit on that farm, do you think?
I fell in love with you the moment you gave me your elbow.
Hello and welcome to the second episode of Tripology. We've arrived, we're here, it's the second episode. I'm Alan and I'm here with the ever-intuitive Adam. Are you as glad to be here as I am?
This is the one I've been waiting for, mate, to be completely honest with you.
Adam, I would like you to let me paint a vivid series of images using the medium of language.
Please do.
So I've been traversing the planet for 4 years and I arrive back in the UK just to say good evening to my family before popping off somewhere else. And then a pandemic strikes.
Yeah, I'm waiting with bated breath.
And I would have been stuck at that point, bound to a life in the UK. But for a little piece of paper that had been sent to me by the Canadian government that I applied for months earlier when I was in Colombia.
You applied for your Canadian visa when you were in Colombia?
I applied for it whilst I was in a hostel in Colombia. I remember the setting very vividly, yeah, in Medellin, Colombia.
Okay, nice.
So I'd worked it all out. I had a Canadian visa, and that was like a little lifeline for me. The problem was, though, is that back when I applied for the visa, you could just go to Canada using that visa. It was just a free pass to enter Canada and live and work in Canada, right? That was the same when you got yours.
I was in the same boat, yeah. Previous to the pandemic, you could arrive in Canada as a tourist.
Exactly. And imagine my surprise where upon hatching my plan to escape the clutches of the UK just to go to Canada, I realised I can no longer do that as was stipulated on my visa because now a job offer was required in order to go to Canada.
Yeah, I was in exactly the same boat.
Well, you were in the same boat, but by the time I had decided on my next move, you'd already freed yourself of the UK because in looking for a place, some place that would give me a job offer in Canada, I realised maybe I don't need the job offer. Maybe I can work in exchange for accommodation and food and use that as a sort of work proxy. So I trawled the internet, found this farm in British Columbia, emailed them asking would they be willing to sponsor me, and who was to respond to that email?
It was me. I was given the task of finding my replacement.
You'd already intended to leave the farm.
Yeah, I knew I wasn't going to be there forever, although I think I was actually there for much longer than I anticipated. And in exactly the same way, I was very thankful that the government was accepting this work sort of exchange for food and accommodation as a job offer, because you would have thought it would have to be a bona fide company, maybe a limited company, a work contract with a predetermined amount of time. It was fairly relaxed, wasn't it?
I think it was somewhat of a grey area, really. You know, they wanted people with job offers, and we found a smallish, neatly sized loophole in because the rules were being made on the fly.
Yeah, no, and things were moving at a rapid rate as well. I would say that what we were doing was less of a job and more of some chores.
Did you arrive there via the same process as me? You'd already applied for a Canadian work visa, but you didn't have a job offer, so you sought out just somewhere that you could go.
Yeah, that's it. I actually had my heart set on Montreal. The industry I'm in, it would make sense. But then I found this opportunity through Facebook and Workaway. I think that the farm that we met on has got a presence on both platforms. So I was found exactly the same way you were. My predecessor chose me as his replacement, and I chose you as my replacement.
Did I find an advert that you'd posted on like Canadian backpackers on Facebook? I think that was maybe how I found you.
Yeah, but I think it was actually the farm or the owners of the farm who posted on Facebook. I was involved in some groups on Facebook, and I don't know if you still are. Facebook they're not sponsoring this episode, by the way.
Well, it's funny you should say that because this episode is sponsored by Zuckerberg. It's a special new brand of mind control.
Yeah, Facebook. So no, anyway, I was involved in a number of groups. Again, this is something that we should definitely communicate, the benefit of Facebook groups and other platforms, communities and things, because there are loads of Facebook groups out there for people who have just landed in Canada, people who are outside of Canada. They're very Canada specific, people that have been on exactly the same journey that we've been on, and people who are trying to embark on that same journey.
I think those are a really valuable resource anyway. Like, I think all backpackers, if you're interested in a country, on your preferred social media website, type in the name of the country and then backpacker. There'll be a group dedicated to backpacking around that country. It's a really valuable resource. So anyway, I find a post from that farm. I contact you. We go back and forth. They send me a letter of offer. It's all done. I have to do a little COVID pre-test and all that stuff. I don't have COVID, so it was a big waste of time. I get on a plane. I fly to Canada. I arrive. You're there to pick me up at the airport.
I am.
I remember seeing you. I remember walking through the airport lobby and seeing you there like a bastion of sex appeal. And I thought, this guy...
I'd recently had my hair cut.
Yeah, you looked great, man. I remember thinking, what a wonderful human being to shepherd me now into my new life in Canada. Because being stuck in the UK was a big deal for me. I'd been traveling non-stop for a long time, for all of my 20s. And, you know, I found myself like, I was so desperate to get to somewhere new. And there you were. You were like a sort of, and what's a famous pop culture figure who brings someone into something new? You were like the fucking mother that finds Moses in the bulrush in the first chapter of the Bible.
You're not the first person who said that.
Well, you look like her in the cartoon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't care how you meant it. I'm taking it as a compliment.
It certainly is one.
The first thing you did, I remember you came down that little sort of slope or whatever it was. You just come off the plane. You come down that little slope. You had your...
The travel slope.
That's it. The arrival slope. The ubiquitous kind of generic arrival slope that is at every airport.
I love that fucking slope, mate.
Especially in Canada.
Yeah.
And you had your day sack, your carry-on bag over one shoulder, and you were holding the arm, and then the strap across your shoulder, and then as you walked down, you looked at me, and you must have known it was me, because I don't think we'd seen a photo of each other, but you put your hand up to your forehead and you did like a salute like that.
Did I?
As soon as I saw you, I was like, that's got to be the guy. And you did the salute, and I thought, how does he know I'm me? But it must have been the Moses thing.
So we should definitely have a Tripology salute that people should do, because at some point, two people who listen to this podcast are going to meet each other in an airport. And I think they should have a little Tripology salute. How many fingers did I use in the salute?
Oh, God. No, you're right. It was probably 3, innit?
I tell you what, we've got an Instagram. It's Tripology Podcast, at Tripology Podcast on Instagram. I'm going to post a picture of me doing the Tripology salute, as I did to Adam at the airport. Everyone go and take a look at that picture. And the next time you meet someone in arrivals who you have no idea what they look like, I want you to give them the old Tripology salute as a sign. And if they do it back...
They're part of the community.
Yeah, they're a part of the community, and you can both huddle around a campfire and listen to this podcast together and maybe fall in love.
This is going to be like the Masons used to be. Secret handshake.
Exactly, yeah. Signet rings will be coming in future episodes when we have a more padded out merchandising store.
Wait for the Tripology merch.
Okay, good. So we've got a Tripology salute. Then what? I had 2 bags, you said?
No, you had one backpack and you were holding the strap on, but I don't think you'd collected your luggage yet, had you? Oh no, maybe that was your only you just had carry-on.
The whole time I've travelled, I've never once checked in a bag, by the way, ever.
I remember when I got picked up from the airport by the owner of the farm, and she said, "Where's your suitcase?" I said, "I don't have one." She was like, "Well, you've lost it then." I said, No, I just wore this carry-on bag. That was it." And she said,
and she went, "You scruffy pig."
She said, "You've moved to how long are you going to be here for? A weekend?" I said, No, I'm here I've moved here. This is it. One-way ticket, and this is all my stuff. She was like, "Right. Well, we can lend you some things." I was like, No, I've got it all. This is all I need. She was like, "Okay, sure. Yeah, just put it in the front seat."
Same as me, you've always just been carry-on, hey? One carry-on bag.
Yeah, all the time.
Occasionally, would you have another bag to go around cities with, like a laptop bag almost.
Actually, when I was traveling through Russia and China and then moved to Australia, I did have a 65-litre backpack. So that's not carry-on. I think 40-litre is probably the maximum, isn't it?
Yeah, usually you can do 45 if it's like a square. But most carry-on backpacks are 40, yeah.
As if it's 45, if it will fit in one of those EasyJet frameworks where you take a run up and have to do an elbow drop onto it.
Yeah. Oh, mate, I've got a great story about one of those EasyJet frames. I've got to tell it sometime on the podcast. Yeah. Okay, go on.
So then what happened, and I don't know if you want me to discuss this, but first impressions are a big thing.
Yeah.
And I remember as you turned that corner and you walked over to me, I thought, I'm going to shake his hand because we're going to be in a car together for the next hour and a half on the way back to the farm. And we're going to be living together. We're going to be working on the farm together. I hadn't decided when I was going to leave yet. And I put my hand out and it was a firm handshake. And I thought, I've been really excited to meet this guy.
Because we'd had a little back and forth over email.
Yeah. Welcome to Canada. And as soon as I put my hand out, you bent your arm and you gave me your elbow.
Which, of course, was the mid-pandemic greeting of choice for many people.
Yeah. But I remember on that car journey home, I just didn't know what to make of it.
Well, this is the thing. I even sat in the back of the car.
Yeah.
You offered me the passenger seat and I was like, oh, but because I'd been traumatized by...
You didn't know how to interact with other humans.
Well, this is the other thing. I'm a big believer in good travelers being like ornithologists. Like they're people that observe but don't necessarily try and impact. So my go-to is to be as respectful as possible. I don't want to even entertain the idea that I would be forthright with like, hey, let's shake hands, let's hug.
So it's my mistake, was it?
Right, but I don't ever want to make someone else feel uncomfortable. So my immediate reaction, mostly all the time when I'm traveling, is to like just do the categorically the most respectful thing. Which in this case was to give you my elbow and sit in the back of the car, in case you were afraid of COVID.
Yeah, or maybe you might have thought I had COVID.
Well, do you know what? I've always suspected you might have something to this day. I'm not sure if it's COVID or, you know.
We should talk about the back and forth as well because we did meet over email, e-meet. Don't you love it when people say that? It's nice to e-meet you. It's a pleasure to e-meet you.
No one's ever said that to me.
Oh, well, we e-met.
The one time I did hear it one time, but it was from someone with a absolutely debilitating speech impediment.
I'm only laughing because you're smiling. But when we touched base, when the owners of the farm asked me to take control of hiring my replacement, we had a little chit chat, and I had absolutely fallen in love with the experience on the farm.
Oh,
I loved it. I love the people I was working for. They've become my surrogate grandparents in Canada, and all the animals, the experiences I was having. Some of those we will go into in detail because some of the experiences of those animals are fucking outrageous.
Yeah,
but you, however bad you think it could be, it's worse.
Well, the farm's not bad. It was a great farm. It's just there was some bonkers experiences with the animals.
Yeah, we got caught up in some crazy goings on, but I felt so strongly about that farm, and I really wanted the couple to have someone who really cared about the position. And one thing that I think is we shouldn't underestimate is that I was chosen by the guy who used to
the boy.
I was chosen by the guy who worked there before me.
Yeah.
And without him, I wouldn't have been able to enter Canada. Certainly not at that current time.
Yeah, and I owe you the same thanks.
Yeah, which is incredible. But in isolation, I think that's a really special thing. But then for Tripology to come out of that, this podcast and our friendship to come out of those few months on that farm,
yeah,
is I think probably epitomizes everything I love about travel.
Tripology is a great big sexy podcast that was conceived on a farm and then had an 18-month gestation period.
Yeah.
Me and Adam were so heavily pregnant with Tripology after that one night where we thought of it on the farm. We've gone to separate sides of the country, like big mamas, and then finally we've given birth. So nice to see it shepherd into its second episode.
I know it's taken us way too long, but in the last 3 months, we've moved at a surprising rate.
Geographically.
No, I mean with things for the podcast. It's not.
Oh, yeah.
It's not as simple as you saying, "Adam, come on, mate, get yourself a microphone and let's record some bits."
Yeah, it isn't as simple as that. It's as simple as many things like that in succession.
Yeah, we've got to take something like the time difference into account.
Exactly. Adam lives an hour behind me, even when we were in the same time zone.
Yeah.
So now that we're in separate time zones, it's even further exacerbated.
It's an absolute nightmare some of the time. I've actually changed the time on my phone, would you believe?
Adam thinks that I, in Alberta, am in like a completely different future than he is in BC. He rings me up sometimes like, what is it like? Are there robots? Are there hoverboards? Is there a monarchy?
Well, the irony to that statement is that going to Alberta is like going back in time, isn't it?
It is, in terms of people's disposition.
I don't want to get caught up in Canadian stereotypes. I don't know enough of them, and I don't feel like...
You shouldn't have been so prejudiced to the Albertans then.
Did we even say where we currently live?
I said Alberta, I think.
What, in the previous pod?
Well, if I didn't, then how come we've got so many Albertan people listening? Is that a coincidence? So
the house prices in Alberta are going through the roof.
If we go by demographics and by inflation in the Alberta property market, then it becomes clear that I mentioned it in the last podcast.
The oil industry is booming for that reason. But yeah, just for clarification, we both used to live in BC, in the Okanagan Valley, at the northern end of that valley, in a small farm. And how long were we together? It was only about 3 or 4 months, wasn't it?
Are you joking?
What, in the same place?
Way less than that. I didn't even do 3 months on the farm.
Oh, it felt like a fucking lifetime.
I know, mate. So many animals lived and died in that 3 months. No, I think I spent maybe around 80 days on the farm.
80 days on the farm. Oh, because you were doing the tally on the back of that barn door as well, weren't you?
That's the name of this episode, 80 Days on the Farm.
80 days. I was there for 5 months.
Yeah, I know. There was a lot of the animals were sick of you.
But hang on, how long was I there before?
Well, I arrived January 12th, and I think you arrived November something, didn't you?
No, yeah, I arrived on November the 25th.
Unlucky day for some people, that.
Not my dad, it's his birthday.
Wow.
Happy birthday, Dad. Bless him, he gave me a lift to the airport on his birthday.
Did he?
4 a.m. we were up.
You say bless him, that was probably the best gift he could have had, wasn't
it? Getting rid of me after.
Fobbing you off.
Yeah. No, it was...
I bet he stayed and watched that plane leave. He was like, fucking hell. Just making sure it was gone.
Handing the pilot some cash.
Yeah.
In departures. Right, which one's got that one? To Canada. Brilliant, mate. Here you go. Don't come back.
Mate, there's too much stuff to talk about this farm for one episode.
Well, we're not going to talk about the farm, are we? We're going to talk about how we met, how our lives...
Oh, I thought we were telling stories of the farm.
No, we can't. We just can't.
There's too many stories.
I haven't got enough tape in my mic.
Yeah. Adam, we should mention for the listeners, Adam's recording on an old Betamax microphone. It's really great. Let's say some of the headlines of stories on the farm, just to tease the idea. There was the time one of the owners got booted in the kidneys by one of the horses.
Oh, well, actually, we can talk about that one right now.
The biggest of all the horses.
Yeah, by as well, unsurprisingly. He is the biggest, and he's got the hardest kick.
Should we name the horse? Is that disrespectful? What if he tries to get a job after this? We should bleep that out, mate.
Yeah, I can't believe I've just thrown him under the bus like that.
I'm going to bleep his name out in post. There was the time we had to pin those pigs down and cut their nails. That's a good story, isn't it?
That happened a few times. Cutting a pig's toenails.
I only did it once.
Did you? I went back and did it a few times.
Well, you can't. The first time you did it can't have been a very good job because as soon as I arrived in that farm, they were getting me to do it.
No, and it was the
They
next.
don't grow that fast.
It was the next time they needed them cut.
What? The pigs needed their nails cut multiple times within a period of a couple of months.
Just for clarification, I still see the people sometimes.
Oh,
So I go back up to the farm from where I live and I help out.
by cutting the pig's nails.
I enjoyed cutting the pig's nails so much. You will, just for the listener, if you've never heard a pig squeal. Oh, fucking hell. That's awful. But the pig squealing, we had to wear ear defenders. Do you remember?
Yeah. No, I didn't get them.
Why not?
Well, because I was trying to impress the owner of the farm when he said there was four of us. There was me, a vet, you, and him, and there was three sets of ear defenders. And I went, I don't need them, mate.
Puffing your chest out. I think I'll be all right, don't you?
Cute 4 a.m. that night. I was traumatized in bed with chronic tinnitus.
It is an incredibly loud sound.
Because I had a pig screaming in my ear.
And it's just surprising as well. They're only getting their nails cut.
They think they're going to die, though.
Oh, that makes me think that they probably make the same sound when they're...
Yeah, that's the sound of an abattoir that you're hearing.
Wow.
We've already told the story of the pigs in its entirety then. That wasn't a headline.
No, fantastic.
There was the time we drove one of the owner's newborn puppies all the way to Calgary in the winter.
Hand-delivered a newborn puppy.
Nearly got eaten by a raven, that puppy, on the way.
Yeah, it did. And there was a woman taking the piss out of me because of it. I mean, I was supposed to be protecting the puppy, but there were even birds of prey hovering over her head. Do you remember when we stopped? We stopped on the side of the road, and there were even birds of prey, like hawks and bald eagles, and they were circling like a...
Eagles with androgenetic alopecia?
You could see, because we had to... The puppy was so young that we had to stop every... Well, and the journey was so long, to be fair. We had to stop every few hours to let the dog out for a wee. And we had this little cage kind of fencing thing that we put up around it. So we'd pull over by the side of the road in the snow and ice. It was minus 32 in Calgary.
That's degrees Celsius. And the owner of the farm had tasked me with helping the puppy to defecate and urinate because it couldn't do that by itself, really. So I had to really set him down and try and get him to poo and wee. And he didn't, did he, all the way? He was constipated.
Well, can you blame him? It was a really, really long drive.
I know. I defecated and urinated more than he did on that journey.
And he didn't want to leave home either, did he?
Well, that's the difficult thing about removing a puppy from its domicile.
Oh, now it's taken a sad turn. We were accomplices.
we were accomplices. You didn't have to put that bag over its head.
I didn't want it to be able to retrace its steps to us.
All right, so let's inject a bit of structure back into this. So where are we? We've sort of rambled on about the farm, but you wanted to talk more about us actually meeting, didn't you?
Yeah, about the fact that we did meet, because we were both, from the sounds of it, we were both in a very similar place. I was working for a very good friend of mine down in the southeast in England, and I had said that I was looking at going away again. I was stuck in the UK for probably 7 months in the end. And God, we're bad, aren't we? We're using words like trap and stuck and all this kind of thing. But I think it's because our head was never in the UK when we were there. We knew we wanted to be somewhere else, right?
That's it. Well, I think we were both thrust back into the UK by circumstance, i.e. this pandemic. We didn't make the cognitive decision of, oh, I'm done with travel now. I'm going to sojourn back to the United Kingdom. That's not where our heads were at. So, by definition, we went with one intention and another intention was forced upon us, i.e. we were stuck.
Yeah, so I was living in Hong Kong at the beginning of the pandemic. I left via Istanbul. I spent a couple of weeks in Istanbul, and that was actually so that I could stay in one place and see if any symptoms developed before going back to the UK.
God, it made travel difficult, didn't it?
It did make travel difficult, but I still travelled through 8 countries during the pandemic, which is more than most.
Yeah, it beats me.
It was still possible. Just turn the news off and keep going. But for me, you know, all I want to do is travel. I want to be able to travel at the drop of a hat. I want to be able to go and visit countries quite freely, and, you know, the way that things used to be in the good old days.
Yeah.
And that was taken away from us. It was ripped away from us. And there was no real sort of end date to it all when we were going through it. There was no... Countries were shutting their metaphorical borders.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a real gift that we were able to both find that farm and use it as a jumping off point in order to build new lives in Canada.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it was a real godsend, I would say. I remember when I saw the Facebook ad go up, and it was, I think, about 1 a.m, and I was sitting in bed on my phone on these groups, and then this advert came up, and it had a lovely picture of the sunset from the farm and a nice message from my predecessor, basically explaining what the job was, what the situation was, how it was going to unfold, and what the couple were looking for, and all this kind of stuff. And I sent him a private message immediately and said, I really want this. Tell me what I need to do. I'm prepared to do anything. These are all my details. Please get back to me as soon as you can. And he started replying to me there and then. And we actually had a 3-hour conversation that night. So the time I went to bed, it was really about 4 or 5 in the morning. And I couldn't even sleep because I was so excited. And the next morning, I booked my flight.
It's that kind of proactivity that you need to have as a traveller, though, isn't it? Like, you know, a situation was thrust upon you or whatever, but you made that decision to get online and get it sorted and make the contacts and get yourself there. You need to be proactive like that as a traveller. Otherwise, you'll end up stuck in mud everywhere you go because you can't spin your wheels. You need to make decisions and make contacts and get out there and put yourself out there, you know?
I think my main takeaway from that experience is that even when you think that you don't have any options, if you are proactive and you continue to look and you spend your time and energy on the right things, be persistent and you will get there. I think what it also demonstrates is just how we met is probably the only way we could have met. You know, we're both travelers, and being on the other side of the world, far away from where we grew up, on a tiny little farm in BC, Canada, is really the only forum that we could have met. We may well have crossed paths many times around the world, but it wouldn't have been anywhere near where we grew up. We only ever would have met travelling.
If you choose the right opportunity, you'll meet incredible people on the way. I always find it so fascinating that me and you have lived entirely different, independent existences that had nothing to do with each other, apart from the fact that we both liked travel. But then, because of one decision that both of us made around a similar time, our lives were intersected. Isn't that so wonderful? Like, if I hadn't clicked on that link on that forum and messaged you, none of this would have happened. If you hadn't been awake at 1 a.m, scrolling and found that ad and responded to that guy, none of this would have happened. All it takes are momentary little decisions, and they change the course of where you're at and who you meet forever. You only regret the things you don't do. So if you're there in your domicile at the moment thinking, what's the next step? You've just got to do something. Start making actions towards manifesting a plan. And I don't mean manifesting in the cosmic spiritual sense of, I wish this to happen so it will happen. I mean manifesting in the very literal, very pragmatic sense of doing something in order to achieve a wider goal. If you want to travel, get on a forum, start talking to some people, maybe apply for a visa, see what's out there. It's all possible. It's all possible. Traveling is wonderful and you can do it. That was episode 2 of Tripology, how me and Adam met. In episode 3, what are we going to discuss?
We're going to talk about why we started traveling. What is it that makes us tick, and what was it that made us make that decision?
I love it. I'm going to go there right now. I'll see you on episode 3. Follow us on all social media at Tripology Podcast and email us at tripologypodcast@gmail.com. I'm about to go off on an adventure to episode 3. Come with me, Adam. I'll see you there. Bye.